Have you ever wondered why your history teacher never mentioned the time an entire country's economy collapsed because of flowers? Or when a single bank crash in a small European country triggered the Great Depression? Everyone knows about 1929 and 2008, but there are forgotten economic disasters that literally rewrote the rules of money. These catastrophes shaped the world we live in, yet most people have never even heard their names. Let's start with something that sounds completely ridiculous. Picture it, the Netherlands, 1630s. People are mortgaging their homes to buy individual flower bulbs, not gardens, not fields of flowers, single bulbs. This was Tulip Mania, the world's first recorded economic bubble, and proof that we've been making terrible financial decisions for centuries. Dutch traders had discovered these exotic tulips from the Ottoman Empire, and soon the rarest varieties became status symbols. Prices began to climb. Then things got weird. People started treating tulip bulbs like a hot new stock. A single bulb could cost more than a skilled craftsman's annual salary. By 1636, they were being traded on stock exchanges. People who had never even seen a tulip were speculating on tulip futures, contracts for bulbs that hadn't even been planted yet. Some bulbs were changing hands 20 times a day, with prices doubling each time. The madness peaked in February 1637. One bulb, the Semper Augustus, sold for 10,000 guilders. That was enough to buy a mansion on Amsterdam's fanciest canal. People were literally trading their homes for flowers. Then, on February 3rd, it all stopped. Buyers in the city of Haarlem couldn't find anyone willing to pay the inflated prices. Panic spread. Within days, tulip prices crashed by 90%. Fortunes vanished. Families went bankrupt. The Dutch economy went into a freefall for years. But here's why it matters today. Tulip Mania gave birth to the first financial regulations. The Dutch government realized they needed rules to stop speculative bubbles from destroying their country. They created the template for modern market oversight that every country now uses. So every time you see regulators investigating a risky new investment scheme, they're using principles first developed after flowers crashed an entire economy. Now let's jump to 1929, but forget Black Tuesday in America for a moment. Before that, Austria experienced the Credit Anstalt collapse, the crisis that actually triggered the Great Depression. Credit Anstalt was Austria's largest bank, holding about 70% of the country's banking assets. Imagine if J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo were all one institution. The bank had been weak since World War I, but politicians kept it alive, terrified of what would happen if it failed. In May 1931, the inevitable happened. Credit Anstalt announced massive losses and couldn't pay its debts. The government tried a bailout, but they didn't have enough money. Foreign investors panicked. They pulled their money out of Austria, then Germany, then all across Europe. This started a domino effect that changed everything. The collapse triggered bank runs across Central Europe. Terrified depositors lined up for blocks to get their savings. Perfectly healthy banks became insolvent overnight simply because everyone wanted their money back at once. The panic spread to London, then to New York, turning a regional Austrian problem into a worldwide catastrophe. The real lesson here was about international finance. Before this, most people thought economic problems stayed within a country's borders. Credit Anstalt proved that modern economies were interconnected in ways nobody understood. It forced the creation of international cooperation agreements between central banks. The Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, they all learned they had to work together. This became the foundation for the international financial safety nets that prevented the 2008 crisis from becoming another Great Depression. Our third disaster takes us to France in the early 1700s for the Mississippi Bubble. This one involves a Scottish gambler, the invention of paper money, and the Louisiana Territory. John Law was basically the 18th century equivalent of a crypto influencer, and he convinced the French government to let him run their entire economy. His big idea, instead of gold and silver, why not use paper money backed by the future profits of French colonies in America?
The French government was drowning in debt and desperate. Law promised to solve everything with his Mississippi Company, which supposedly held exclusive trading rights to Louisiana and all its future wealth. Law convinced French nobles that company shares were a guaranteed ticket to riches. The stock price exploded. It attracted more investors, which pushed the price higher, which attracted even more. By 19, Mississippi Company shares had increased by over 2,000%. Servants became millionaires overnight. Paris had its first ever traffic jams as people rushed to trade shares. But Louisiana wasn't actually generating any profits. The company was paying dividends with money from new investors, the literal definition of a Ponzi scheme. In 1920, someone finally did the math. The bubble burst spectacularly, taking down the entire French banking system and causing a recession that lasted for decades. The Mississippi bubble taught the world a crucial lesson. Currency needs to be backed by real assets, not just promises. This crisis led directly to the development of modern central banking principles that govern how much money can be printed without causing runaway inflation. Now for a crisis that proves governments can go bankrupt just as easily as companies. In 1825, Latin American countries experienced their first sovereign debt crisis. After winning independence from Spain, nations like Mexico, Peru, and Colombia needed money. British investors, flush with cash from the Industrial Revolution, were eager to lend to these exciting new markets. British banks sold millions in bonds, backed by the new government's promises to repay. The problem was, these new countries had no idea how to run modern economies. They spent the borrowed money on military hardware and luxury goods for officials, not on productive investments. But British investors kept lending, assuming the legendary colonial wealth would make repayment easy. Reality hit in 1825, when silver prices collapsed. Several Latin American countries simply announced they couldn't pay their debts. British investors lost fortunes. Major British banks failed. The crisis showed that a national government could default, just like a private company. This event created the template for modern sovereign debt management. It established the principle that countries need independent central banks, fiscal discipline, and international oversight to borrow responsibly, lessons that formed the foundation for organizations like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Our final forgotten crisis brings us to Japan in the 1990s and the lost decade. This one is a chilling preview of what can happen to any modern economy. During the 1980s, Japan seemed unstoppable. Its economy was booming. Japanese companies were buying up American landmarks. Real estate in Tokyo was so valuable that the Imperial Palace grounds were supposedly worth more than all the land in California. But it was all built on borrowed money. Banks were lending to anyone who wanted to buy stocks or real estate, using those same assets as collateral. As long as prices rose, it was a perfect system. Then, in 1990, the Nikkei stock index lost over 60% of its value. Real estate prices collapsed. Japanese banks were left holding trillions in bad loans. The government tried everything: stimulus packages, interest rate cuts, but nothing worked. Japan spent the next 20 years in economic stagnation. The lost decade taught the world that even the most advanced economies could fall into a long-term trap if they let debt and speculation get out of control. These 5 crises all share a common DNA: speculation, borrowed money, and the dangerous belief that prices can only go up. They all ended with ordinary people losing everything. But more importantly, each disaster forced us to learn. They shaped the financial regulations, central banking policies, and international agreements that structure our world. The next time you wonder why banks have so many rules or why governments coordinate during a crisis, remember these stories. The policies exist because previous generations learned these lessons the hard way. Understanding these forgotten patterns helps you recognize the echoes in today's economy. History might not repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And those rhymes are worth remembering.